Welcome, this is Legion, to yet another episode of How to Draw a City. And I am going to be straight up honest with you. I love doing these tutorials, so if there is anything you actually want to know, if even it's a how would you draw this, how would you approach that, please just hit me up with a comment down below. I promise you I take them all very seriously. I am loving the sharing experience and I want you all to be able to draw fantastic city maps. Not boring city maps, awesome city maps that are truly head turners. So with that said, this is, in the last chapter we started talking about drawing our buildings. And we spoke a little bit about building shapes, variations of shapes, don't have the same rectangles over and over and over, don't cut and copy. It creates repetition to the eye and your city will start to look boring. Now we're going to move on a little bit. But before I do, I actually want to go back a little bit to the road guidelines. And what I mean by road guidelines is something like this. Even if you're doing ink on paper, and I did for many, many years, you want to mark out where your roads are going to be. Your main roads, your secondary and your tertiary roads, right? You don't need to get every single one. You don't need to get every single alleyway. But you are giving a broad brushstroke, and think about it this way, reserving space, that negative space, for where there won't be buildings. And where there aren't buildings, there's a road, right? And we obviously have a very clear main road coming through here, kind of following the river's edge, coming, and then it's going to hit the warehouse area, which we're going to come back to in a moment. The warehouse area joins an actual marketplace, it then joins an inner road, let's call it like a ring road, and the outer gate there. In between the two, and it looks a little bit like a mess or a flying spaghetti monster, but I have drawn these, I'm going to call them single line neighborhood sort of districts, right? And like following here and here, and all of these, I'm intending to draw on either side of these single lines buildings. And by doing that, I create districts. I create clusters and neighborhoods. Let's call them clusters, building clusters. And everywhere else in between them, we've obviously got our secondary and our tertiary roads. But there are two ways of going about that. And I quickly want to share with you the second way that I used to do, honestly, for about 20 years. And brace yourself, because this is going to seem kind of crazy. Something like this. Do it with a pencil. In fact, let's change ourselves to grey so it feels more pencil-like. Where are my secondary roads going to be? That. Now that may seem utterly ridiculous. Let's drop a little opacity onto it. But look what happens if I start to draw buildings either side of that chaos. Now remember, these represent one side of the road. Now, I'm not going to talk about shapes right now, but pay attention to the type of thing that I'm doing to create variety. So no two shapes are the same next to each other. In fact, you could even do something like this. And then a little bit of roof detail. Voila, different shape. But I'm going to flip to the other side. And I'm leaving a gap. I love doing that little notch approach, by the way. It's a great way to take what is basically like a square or a rectangle. And then notch it. And it comes across almost like it's a little doorway or something, right? Take it one stage further. And you've just created, what, like a yard? Maybe a garden area? opportunities for adding a little fence around the outside. Now, this is just to quickly show that drawing those really haphazard, crazy lines can give us a city shape, or a road edge, and therefore a city shape, just as easily, if not easier, than planning them out. In fact, let me do the intersection here. You'll see what I'm saying. And it's almost like you could give yourself a challenge. Just throw down some random lines in random directions and go. You could do the same city with different random lines and get a completely different feel. That would actually be a cool future project. Maybe a different video, huh? Alright, I'm doing this quickly. We're going to be erasing all of this. But I just want to demonstrate that right there, just by using those crazy, crazy, random lines of chaos, we can absolutely get our districts marked out. And we'll do one more. I'm gonna just do something like that. And that was just some crazy, almost paint splashed across the canvas lines. I could do that all over now. Draw these buildings now all over, and it would look fine. Particularly if we then combined that, which you should, with marking out certain areas where this is where my temple's going to be. I have a hill here, I have a palace here, I have my warehouses here. Still do those lines, just random directions, even random lengths, and you get this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful look. Now, let's just hide them for a moment. Let's get back to our city proper. What we're doing is I marked out my main roads, and you should still do that, and I have almost more purposefully drawn in, well, my secondary roads, and it creates a little bit more of a thought process, but it also allows you to be a little bit more deliberate in maybe I want to take a curved path and bring it up to the top of the hill. I want to ensure that I am connecting between these roads over here. I want to make sure I have a secondary road over there. So it's a lot more deliberate. But and therefore it actually can be a little bit more difficult because you kind of almost enter a different sort of mind state, as obviously compared to yeah, let's draw that. But both methods work, and I've used both methods, and I encourage you to. You can also do a little bit of a hybrid. Mark off your main roads, mark off your main districts. If there are particular areas that you know that you want to have, and I'll use the path going up towards a temple on the top of the hill, or maybe a road going towards a palace or something, mark them off, and then do the crazy lines all over, and draw. See where it gets you, okay? I promise you, you will get some interesting district shapes, and we'll be talking more about that in a later chapter. First, let's come back to our building layer, and today we're going to talk about warehouses. We're going to start doing a deep dive into particular buildings and how they should differ from other buildings. And to demonstrate this, I'm actually going to do a couple of those other buildings. And we're going to talk then about how I would draw warehouses that make it very obvious. Aside from the fact that we're at some docks here, which we will be drawing in some of those, but what is it about a warehouse district that makes it a warehouse district? Well, to my mind, several things come to thought. First and foremost, obviously, the time period we're in is going to come into play. If I'm drawing in the docks of the River Thames, let's say around like a gaslight sort of period, well, I'm going to get that almost industrial feel going on. I'm definitely going to have some cranes, that type of thing. Maybe some train yards coming in. But this is a fantasy city, so I'm going to throttle that back a little bit. But big buildings, right? Big buildings, docks, and maybe, depending, some cranes. Some loading and unloading cranes. So if you think about it, they had them in Roman times. Manually operated, animal operated, or whatever. They definitely had them to aid the loading and unloading process. So I kind of actually like throwing in cranes nowadays on my maps. And I think we're going to show you that. But to give some context, this is one of our messy little corners, and at some point I'm actually going to clean up some of these lines where we've drawn in our towers. But I've marked our warehouse district. We know where our docks are going to be. I've already started kind of making our little sort of dock areas. We're going to add some piers. And I've decided that I want this road kind of connecting with this inner road over here. So I'm actually going to draw in a couple of things there to help frame the docks that we're going to draw. What other types of things would be near docks? Well, certainly I like to think that within a stone's throw there could be some kind of market going on. Even if it's a small market, it's the places where, your fishmongers come in, or your fishermen come in and they're selling off the fish from the morning catch. It can be simply where, the goods are now moving on deeper into the city, deeper into the empire, and where some of that initial trading is going on. We could have loading areas, unloading areas, and we might even start to get into some workshops, right, in the area. And I like to draw, as almost secondary buildings behind the warehouses, that sense of a workshop. By the way, if you think about it, as I'm talking out loud, I'm pointing myself in the city. I'm imagining what could be there. I encourage you to do the same, because it really helps the creative process as you start putting pen on paper. So let's draw ourselves a little warehouse, and we'll slap down one on each corner. And when I say warehouse, I mean workshop. Workshops. What do you think when you see a workshop? Well, take a step backwards for a moment in your mind's eye. Maybe a long building, a back workshop area, and a yard. There's always some kind of front yard, right, where they could easily move goods in and out, materials in and out. There might be a solid front to it, but then there'll be big gates and maybe an open courtyard on the inside. That's the type of thing I'm thinking about. Let's draw both. Now I'm just going to do the outside shape for now. And there's two things I want you to note here. I've created the L-shaped building, that long building with maybe a workshop in front. Here, maybe we'll just create an insinuation of some doors, nice big doors at the side there. I haven't done any roof detail yet. We'll come back to that. I have lined up next to my road edge. So if we actually did one on the other side, and of course that's not finished, I want to likewise line up with my road edge. Now, two things here. One, these are going to be smaller than the warehouses, but they're bigger than my buildings out on the other side over there. You see that? They're quite a bit bigger, because they're workshops. They're not a place where someone lives. Well, maybe they do, but you know what I mean? It's like, it is a bigger building, maybe the size of 4 buildings. Now, you have a choice when it comes to an outer barrier here. I say barrier because it might be a fence. It might be a wall. It might be an iron rail. I tend to approach them the same way, and here's why. If I draw a solid line here, which you can totally do, it can start to look like it's part of the building, particularly when zoomed out. And you start to lose the definition of there's actually a workshop back there. To help that, cut a hole in the front. Now, that could be a gate. right? If you actually drew in the gate, you lose the effect. If I'm going to do a gate, I tend to draw it open, because now it's obviously some kind of gate. The alternative is put a couple of pillars on the front, it's an opening. Now, in reality, when you write this actual location up in whatever you're GMing, this could easily be the opening that with a gate to a courtyard, but you don't have to draw the gate itself. You don't have to. For variety, do some with, some without. I like this. There's another technique that you can actually do. Draw actual physical blocks on the end. What is that? Still gate. It could be a gate, right, with big thick pillars either side. It could also be little like guardhouses, you know, where maybe there's a watchman sort of standing there checking everyone in and coming out. And on that note, you could actually take it one stage further and maybe do something like this and mix and match a little bit. I'm actually going to go with that route. And maybe we'll just give them a little door on the other side. Doors, by the way, you don't have to draw every single door. Like, don't draw every door. Doors are one of those little tricks. You put it in your back pocket. It's detail. Roof details and side details. A notch in. A door is almost like a notch out. Is one way to make this building different than the buildings around it. If you give every single one a door, you lose that ability to have that, that variation. So keep it in your pocket, just like you would with the roof. Now, also here, if I did this, that gives a sense that I'm looking at 3 almost loading doors right there, and that's good. I'm okay with that. There are other ways of doing it. You could do it more like maybe just even leave it open. You could even do recesses. I like this too. That looks more like loading docks. I think that's a good look. Perhaps you don't even do anything there. Maybe you just do little sort of insinuations. But one way you can imply that there is an entrance there or something going on or traffic coming and going is to actually draw in a path. And here's what I mean. I'm slightly stippling this. What do you start to see there? You start to see, and we'll colour this in later, but you start to see that maybe there's traffic coming and going to each of these locations. Let's actually just cut this back a little bit because it'd probably be shaped a little bit more like this. And I wouldn't necessarily, I was about to say I wouldn't necessarily do this right now, but I'm a liar. I would. Here. Something like this. And I've just drawn in a little cart. Now, here's the thing. As we get into the warehouse district, I am going to actually recommend that you do start to add some roof details more than you typically would. And there's going to be various different ways that we can do that. With something like a workshop, I do feel that maybe it will have our sort of regular sort of roof shape. We'll kind of like bring it down like so. Kind of like this. I don't want to make the line too heavy, like, the outside wall. If we did something like this, we have a lovely roof. That there looks great. I'm happy with it. We're going to move on. But it doesn't look like a warehouse, right? Because of the yard at the front, because it is a little bit smaller, because of the shape of it, it feels more like it is a workshop-like area. Maybe an area where they are storing or moving some goods, but kind of like not on a mass level. So that's cool. What's going on with the area opposite it? Well, the reason why I drew this is you can make a simple block like this way more interesting by giving it a courtyard. Like so. And if we go a little bit of roof right here, something like so, maybe we'll give it a little bit of this. Now I'm actually drawing the roof on because I want the courtyard down below to stand out. I'm actually going to cut out the front I'm going to notch it in to imply that there is a large inner a way that you go in. And then in the courtyard in the center there, you can totally leave it blank. You can totally leave it blank. We're going to color it later on. And there's ways of making that like very interesting. But you can also do the same sort of little path approach to imply that there is some traffic coming and going. And when we color that later, it will really pop out. But you can see that that looks like a square of buildings with an open inner courtyard, large entrance to it. Well, what if we did this? Well, maybe they've got some goods stacked up in the courtyard right there. Just little dots. That's all you gotta do. Now, why did I start with the workshops? Because I wanted you to see what that looks like when we actually start drawing the main warehouses themselves. Let's just do about 20 minutes into this. Let's see if we can get a warehouse done, and then we'll continue this in the next chapter. So we're going to draw a warehouse here now. I'm going to follow our edges. I'm going to leave a gap between the warehouses so it's not too boxy. I'm going to leave a gap between the warehouse and the workshops back here. And I am going to leave a gap along the main harbour itself, right? That's where they're moving goods after all. First and foremost, let's just give ourselves an insinuation of like a little crane, a loading, unloading apparatus. Additionally, we've got some goods. Maybe we'll go one stage further. Little cart. Now let's do the warehouse. Now for the warehouse, I'm going to recommend it. Now this corner, by the way, this corner is awesome because it's a very awkward corner. How are you going to join that? We're going to do that in the next chapter because I want to show you how you can handle those awkward angles, and there's so many beautiful ways that you can do it. So I'm going to start over here, and we're going to go big, baby. We are literally going to go big. We are going to do something like this, and you know what? Let's step in from this one. So we'll do something like this. You'll note I'm not following this line. I kind of want it to... It's going to have a nice little bend there that will make it visually interesting. I am actually going to bring that warehouse in to here. And on the back, you know what we're going to do on the back here? Because I do want it to meet that road. I'm going to wall it in. I'm going to wall it in with a fence. And there isn't going to be an opening. You can almost imagine going down that road. You can see this big warehouse on your left. Iron fence, maybe on top of a wall. Stacked with goods. Now, I'm actually adding some details a little ahead of time, but again, I'd like to throw in a little cart. Other types of goods. I'm just drawing lines here. But it looks like I've got stacked timber or something going on, right? This is now an area that's got some life to it. That's the point. This is not an unused area anymore. I mean, look at this little synergy going on between them. Okay, so now let's do the front. There are so many different ways we can do warehouses. I think we're going to do an episode just on warehouse shapes alone. But for this one, I'm going to recommend something like this. In fact, let's follow the shape here, and I'm going to show you how we can get this very weird angle to the front to be a little bit more natural. I like the fact that it is following the front of the actual harbour itself, but I don't like that it kind of creates this off rectangle, but I also don't want to destroy it in its entirety. So you know what I'm going to do? I still have a rectangle there, but I have broken up the fact that it was, what is it? Is it a trapezoid or something? Where it's slightly not a rectangle? That's technical. And this is now my main loading area coming in and out. So I'm going to make sure that I've got lots of goods in here so we know that it's my main loading area. Let's stack up some crates here. Let's get a cart. Let's stack up some goods here. And again, I'm kind of going to give it a very big entrance, and I'm going to do this type of thing. Now, I'm actually going to put some roof detail on this. And warehouses can actually have all sorts of different weird and wonderful roofs. But first and foremost, I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a ladder coming up the side. A stairway. I can almost imagine now PCs planning on getting on the roof. Talking of which, let's give it a raised roof right here. Something like that. Now I'm imagining that this is actually a flat roof on the top, but not all of it. Not all of it. I'm going to do this. Another roof on the top. Let's make this one raised. Let's bring it down like that. Now I'm imagining that this is all sunken down here a little bit, but it's a flat roof. What great opportunities for actually getting a little bit of an adventure on the top here, right? I can imagine like the NPCs or the PCs coming up onto the top, sneaking up the top here, maybe looking down through a glass ceiling right there. There is the start of our warehouse district. And I don't know about you, but I'm already digging that. I am already beginning to feel it. Rules for this chapter. You're drawing bigger. Place yourself right there. What do you see in your mind's eye? Draw it. Docks. We're going to have docks. We're going to have piers. We're going to have cranes. We're going to have goods. We're going to have big warehouses. And then workshops and things like that behind them before we start falling back into the main city itself. That's what I'm beginning to build here. We are going to continue in the next chapter walking along the dock area, filling in different types of warehouses. And I'm going to show you dozens of different ways of approaching not only warehouse shapes, but warehouse roofs themselves. Until then, on my Patreon, if you have an interest, I actually have an accompanying book that I am writing, and I release one chapter every month for my patrons, and it accompanies this video. That don't have exactly the same content. It does more of a blow by blow, but then shows some variations and approaches. If you have an interest, I encourage you to check that out on patreon.com/Alyssa Faden. Link down in the description below. Otherwise, just thank you for watching this video. Again, if there's anything that you would like to see, please hit me up in the comments below. If you want to see the future chapters of this series, and I'm having such a blast with it, please hit me up with a like and a subscribe. It is truly appreciated, encourages me to do more, and honestly, I look forward to seeing your map creations. Until then, my fellow Alyssa Legionaries, much love to you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all on the flip side.